Hey everyone, it's me, Kirk Mastin, and today I'm going to be talking about the Mastin Toolkit that is included with every preset pack that we make for Lightroom. And there's a lot of really exciting stuff in there. This toolkit and pretty much everything that we made was updated on November 12th of 2020. So if you're watching this and you haven't updated your packs, you should do so. If you bought before November 12th, 2020, you need to go to your account, download your purchases again. Those will be the new ones. Make sure you delete your old stuff and then reinstall, and you'll have all these new cool features, which will make your editing even easier than before. So let's just dive right into it. If you have any questions while you're watching, please put them in the comments, and Casey will flag me down and I'll answer them as we go. But otherwise, let's jump in. So I'm going to start with what I always talk about, which is our three-step workflow. It's very, very simple, but it's important to go in this order. You want to apply the preset first. That's very important. Next, you want to adjust exposure. Usually this is up a little bit because most camera sensors want to protect highlights, so your files are going to be a little underexposed on import. And then third, you're going to adjust white balance and tint. Tint being more difficult than white balance, but we'll get into that. But that's the key right there. That's how you get the good skin tones and make everything lock into place. And that is up to you and not the camera and not Lightroom and no magic bullet preset because they don't exist. That is up to you as a professional, which you are, right? Right? Yes. This is why people pay you money to edit and take photos, because you're going to be the master of white balance and tint, and it's a great lifelong skill. Okay, but let's get back to the toolkit. So we have the basic three-step edit. That will do it for you most of the time. But we also added a bunch of new cool tools for very specific situations that you may run into. So I'm going to go over those today. Again, if you have any questions while you're watching, put them in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them. Okay. So all these are community images. I have not edited any of these before, so we'll see what happens. I will do my best. It's kind of cool just to edit whatever comes up. This is by Lisa Gemperline. Thank you for sending this in. This is actually the thumbnail image for this entire broadcast. It's really cool. We like this image a lot. Very captivating gaze. What I try to do when I edit each photo is I try to match up what film look is going to be appropriate for the image. And this image could kind of go one of two ways for me. It could either go really kind of bright and colorful with something from the Adventure Everyday pack, because it is kind of a cheerful image out in the desert. It's got there's some bright color in her dress. It's a pretty exciting dress color to wear. Or we could go for light and airy. They're very non-traditional looking though. He's kind of like a hipster-ish kind of guy, really cool looking. He's got these cool glasses, like longer hair. She's got a non-traditional dress, so I think something exciting from the Everyday or Adventure Everyday pack would be suitable. So let's do two edits. Let's do gold 200. So I apply the preset. Next, I'm going to adjust exposure. In this case, it's a little bit too hot, so I'm gonna actually bring exposure down. I don't do that too often, but sometimes it happens. And then I'm going to increase my temperature. And then I'm going to look around the image and see if there's any kind of tint issues. And I usually look at neutral colors, meaning things that I know that are black or gray or white, and that's how I kind of determine if something is too green or too magenta. So looking at this image, the color balance looks pretty good. I'd say maybe it's a little bit magenta. So I'm going to slide the tint slider towards green just a tiny bit, hardly at all. And that is your basic edit. Now, some of the tools you're familiar with, like the tone profile section, which I like to think of as contrast control. You can use this section to control like the highlights in the sky, or maybe bring out a little detail down here in the shadowy area. So we could do like all soft. That's really nice. And now we can move on to the new tool section, or some of the new tools. So we've got auto white balance. Sometimes this will be correct, sometimes it won't. There is a weird little bug in Lightroom, you may or may not notice, because this tool is never meant to be used this way exactly. But if you hover over it, you're going to get a white balance that is not going to be the white balance when you actually apply it. So here's the white balance I set. I hover over it. It looks super cool. I click it, and then it goes even cooler. That is a bug in Lightroom. There's nothing we can do about it. So just don't worry about it. It's just they never developed a preview for auto white balance, and no one's really ever put it in a preset pack or anything. So Adobe, that's just like some free beta testing for you, I guess. I find a lot of weird stuff in both Adobe and Lightroom and Capture One with what we make. But in that case, the auto white balance didn't work. It doesn't always work. Again, it's a computer trying to figure out what it's seeing. It's not a human being. And it cooled them way, way down because there's so much natural warm yellow in the photo. So like their skin, his hair, her dress especially is throwing it off. I'll try it on some other photos, see how it works, but it's a nice tool to have. Next we have lens correction on. This gets rid of the vignetting in the corners and any kind of lens distortion. This tool has already existed in previous packs. The difference is that we added chromatic aberration and fringing correction to it, which you will only notice in very particular photos, but it's making it a little bit better. So here is lens correction on. Let's see if it does much. It did a little bit. It lightened up the corners a little bit. We have auto transform, which is for perspective control. We don't need it in this photo. There's no buildings or doorways. I'll use that in a minute on another photo. And then the last kind of major new tool is orange reduction, which is meant to not be used all the time, but it's meant to take the edge off of orange and skin tones when you've got everything else dialed in how you want. And sometimes the lighting situation or maybe color reflection from a wall or something else is adding too much orange into the skin tone, or sometimes the person you're shooting has a spray tan or they're super tan and it's just not working, or maybe it's makeup. Orange reduction is a way to solve for that. So yeah, people so far have loved it. So like if I wouldn't really use it on this photo. I think they look great with the basic edit, but basically if I hover over it, you'll see it just knocks down that orange just a little bit. So let's move on. We didn't use a lot of the tools in that one, but we will in the next one. So this is by Abul Shah. For this one, let's do something that's a little more suited for the city. Maybe a look out of the Fuji Color Everyday pack. I really like Superior 400 as a great all-around look. It's got a nice amount of contrast. It has a really nice color palette, nice skin tones. It leans a little bit into red, brown tones compared to Fuji C200, which is more yellow-orange. So let's see how that looks. Looks flippin' awesome. Great. Okay, so Superior 400. I'm going to, I think the exposure is fine too. Actually, I'm going to leave that. Okay, so it's one click edit so far. Temperature and tint. I think they look good. I mean, maybe bring temperature down just a tiny bit. I barely moved it. And then as far as tint goes, again, I'm looking for neutrals. I'm looking around. I'm a little thrown off because the steel in this building looks a little bit green, and yet her jacket looks a little bit, I don't know if it's meant to be kind of like a purple jacket or something, but it looks a little bit magenta. But her hat looks right on. I mean, there's no tint either towards green or magenta there, so we're just going to leave that alone. So it's a one-click edit basically so far, which we never promise, because no one can do that unless it's totally garbage. The preset that you're using. No preset should ever be one click. That is like the red warning flag of danger. But yes. Anyway, lens correction on. Let's use that. No change. Maybe it is an old lens that has no profile. Well, maybe the 50 is so corrected it doesn't need it. Okay, forget that. Let's do auto transform on. Awesome. So auto transform looked at the lines behind them in that doorway and straightened the photo out. That's great. And then, you know, we could use orange reduction here if we wanted to. I think that mutes it a little bit too much. It's not really the situation I would use it in, but again, you can see the change as I hover over it. But I think this edit looks great with just very basic corrections. Maybe the last thing I would do would be highlight soft to kind of knock down the highlights on her fingers and on her cheek and a little bit on her hat. So we'll do highlight soft. That's pretty, that looks nice. Actually, let's do all soft. Yes, really nice. It looks really good. So there is before and after. Oh, that's kind of interesting. In the before and after, it removes the perspective correction. So you can see on the left side, the image tilts backward. I love auto transform. It's really a powerful tool. I think sometimes the difference between an okay photo and a great photo is that you have that really nice flat plane of a scene that you're shooting. So think of like a canvas that you're painting on. You want it just completely flat to you. And I think when you correct perspective, you make your image more powerful. So if you look at a lot of like really classic photography, like in the canon of photography, not the camera brand, but canon meaning like the grand story of photography, some of the very best photos have really been super careful about maintaining really correct perspective. You'll notice, if you start looking for it, you'll notice it all the time. And that is what the auto transform tool can do for your photography. It's a small change, but if I turn it off, that is not as good. It is not as nice to the brain to look at something falling backwards as it is to look at something straight on. So just a little pro tip. I love that tool. It is my favorite tool that we have added ever, followed probably by maybe orange reduction. So, all right, thank you, Abul. Super great photo. I love it. All right. So Joshua Treadway, thank you for sending this in. It is very underexposed, but that's totally okay. We can bring all of that back because it's a RAW file. You should only shoot in RAW. There's no reason to shoot in JPEG in this day. Storage is basically free at this point. So since it is a RAW file, we should have no problem making this look great. For this, I'm gonna do, let's see if we can just somehow, through some miracle, make this light and airy. I think that would be exciting. So we're gonna somehow just wrestle with this photo, make it light and airy. Maybe it can be. If not, I'll do something else. So we're gonna do Fuji 400H. That's the first step. Second step, a massive exposure increase. Let's go way up. And then temperature and tint. Let's see if auto white balance can do this one. Okay, so that you hover over it, and then it gives you a different white balance. It's like a 3-step white balance because the tool's kind of jacked up because there was never meant to be a preview for that. Anyway, just talked about that. But look, yay, auto white balance. I could just skip temperature and tint. Looks really good. Okay, let's go to some of the other tools. Let's do all soft while we're here. That took care of the dress. And then let's do lens correction on. Let's do auto transform on. Maybe it can hit those. It did. That's cool. It actually read these little fence posts and made the picture a little more correct perspective wise. Does not need orange reduction because you can't even really see their skin. And I'm just going to give it a little crop because it's just, there's way too much room at the bottom. So let's just crop it up here. And in fact, I'm going to crop it 4:3 because, well, if you've seen my 9 million other videos, I just always crop my tall verticals as 4:3. I just think it's a little more balanced looking. And there we go. Whoops. Maybe like right about there. I don't like the edge of that post sticking there. Okay, there we go. Look at, there's a photo inside the photo. That's really nice. It's a really nice photo. And here is, let me show you before and after. That's before and after. Slightly different. We were able to get a light and airy look out of the pit of darkness, and it looks really good. It's a super nice photo. So yeah, great job, Joshua. Thank you for sending it in. All right, let's go to somewhere completely different. Let's go to the beach. And this photo is going to be a little bit challenging. I haven't touched it yet. The reason I think it's going to be challenging is that I have some doubts that there is any information left in his shirt or her dress, because it is kind of a higher exposure. This is by Roshan. It's a really cool scene. I love it, but we will get a very nice edit out of this. I promise you. We'll find a solution. This is a trickier photo. If I go to the exposure slider and slide it all the way down, it's a little trick I learned in the Navy, where you can check exposure. No, I was never in the Navy. My dad was, but I wasn't. Anyway, if you pull it all the way down, back to my story, pull the exposure slider all the way down and then look for detail, you can see that there is no detail in those white areas. It's totally gone. So that means we will not be able to get it back no matter what we do. Even with all the fantastic tools that we have at our disposal, it will never come back. We'll still get a good edit though, I think, maybe. Okay, so this is a bright, colorful, sunny vacation type of photo. What would be nice on this? You know what? Yes. I think actually C200 from Fujicolor Everyday would be nice. And the reason I'm picking C200 is that it's one of the only looks that we've emulated that really handles highlights in a very unique, soft way, even softer than Fuji 400H. It's like a little known secret. I don't see a lot of people posting with C200 in the group, which is a shame because it's such a cool look. It's just been overshadowed by Superior 400, but whatever. It'll make a comeback like gold made a comeback after ektar was like hogging the spotlight for a year. But here's C200. You get that kind of like crushed highlight. The white balance is way too magenta. So first, let me take care of exposure. That's step number 2. Let's see if auto white balance is going to work in this case. All right, there's the fake, like I'm going to trick you white balance, and then we applied it, and it looks pretty good actually. It's a little bit, maybe it's still a little bit too warm. We'll bring that down a little bit, but the auto white balance took care of a lot of the tint issues. This image will suffer some color issues because it's so overexposed, but I think it's in a much better spot now. If I zoom in, you can see maybe a little bit of magenta. So I'm going to do just a little bit further correction there, but auto white balance got me closer, which is nice. This is a tricky one. Okay, that's pretty good. So C200 is taking care of the highlights a little bit. It's made the roll off a lot smoother. So even though there is no detail in his shirt, the roll off is a little more believable. So it's a good choice for this image. Let's see, lens correction. Will that do anything nice? Yeah. So you saw how it like kind of evened out the corners. That was good. Let's do auto transform. Okay, I don't know what. Whoa. Okay. That's cool. See that is why auto transform is the MVP of the year for me. I mean, you don't have to do much to be MVP in 2020, but I think auto transform is the MVP because that is like perfect. It's awesome, and that now it looks pretty good. Like we've dealt with the contrast issues. We didn't even have to touch the tone profile section, but the look itself, C200 did a lot of work. Let's see if all soft can. It's even better. Okay, all soft. That is how you do it. That's how it is made. That looks pretty good. Look at that. It's like a magic factory. Let's just split them. Okay. That looks really good. I'm happy about that one. Okay. So, Roshan, thank you for sending this in. Wish I was there. It is so crappy here in Seattle right now. Yes.
A question actually about the last photo. Molly Prinz, she says, was talking about you bringing up the exposure.
Mhm.
She says, does exposing that much make the photo grainy? I find that happens to me a lot, and she shoots raw.
Was she talking about the photo where they're walking away?
Mhm.
Yes, Molly, you are correct. So her question is, when you bring up exposure a lot, like in a photo like this, so if we remember that it used to look like that, and we went up to here, yes, it makes it grainier. If you zoom in, you can see a little bit of grain in the trees. I've also cropped the image. That is just a factor of, underexposing and bringing it up. You're pushing your sensor to its limit. You're bringing out a lot of detail that's barely there. And my suggestion is, and this is gospel, okay? Don't under or overexpose. You will gain no benefit from it. None. There's no magic bullet. If you feel like your image looks like garbage, using a certain preset or something, you just hate it, you don't like it. The solution wasn't to have shot it more exposed or less exposed. That will do nothing for you. The only reason you would ever shoot super underexposed, and it's hardly even a reason anymore, is to protect highlights like in the sky, maybe. Otherwise, you're kind of screwing yourself, because when you do that super underexposure, you're going to have to bring it up at some point. And when you do, you're going to make your image noisy as hell. And if you super overexpose, you're going to run into Roshan's issue here, where you have no detail in the highlights. So if you're having trouble with the look you want, the key is not to think about, should it be over or underexposed. I see this conversation in the group all the time still. That is not the magic bullet. The magic bullet is what light you're shooting in, what your models, what they're wearing, where they are, their location, what was your aperture, what preset are you using, or film. That matters. That really matters. If you overexpose it or underexpose it and you're shooting raw, that is the wrong rabbit hole to go down and will not make a difference. Just shoot normal. Normal is good. Just normal. That's all I got to say about that. The group is getting way better at it, though. I remember a couple of years ago, it was like only conversations about what was the magic bullet, how far underexposed, how far overexposed. Those things do not matter. Okay, so let's see. This is by Paulina Grady's. Paulina has sent in a lot of really nice stuff, so great to see another image. She wanted gold. Okay, so when people send in images, you can request what you want it edited with, and I like that because then I don't have to think too hard. So we're going to do gold 200. I think that's a fantastic choice. Gold 200 I love because it has very nice jade green shadows and warm skin, and that is like perfect for this image because we already have some really nice green going on, some warm backlighting. They're really going to pop from this image with gold. So let's do gold 200. Exposure maybe up a little bit, and then we're going to raise the temperature, although they're already raising the temperature. Okay, sorry, that's a stupid joke. Yeah, oh, love is love. I love love. So we raise the temperature. I'm gonna kind of zoom around and see if I can see any weird, tint issues. So I'm looking all over the place. Notice that I'm not necessarily looking at them. I'm looking for neutrals, like down here, like kind of in the slats of this board. I know that's dirt down there, but that's probably pretty neutral. Her white shoes are neutral. His white shirt is neutral. So do those look a little bit magenta or green? I would say they look a little magenta, actually, like right here on his trap. That's that muscle in the back. So I'm going to make it a little more green. Yeah, just a tiny bit. Let's see, how far did I drop it down? Well, that's quite a bit of a drop. Okay, so it went from plus 27 to, to plus 14, plus 27, plus 14. Plus 14 is so much better. It is like perfect now. Actually, it could go a little warmer now that I did that. And I'm going to increase exposure just a little bit more. Now that is a beautiful photo. Here is before and after. Whoop. That's really nice. Easy edit. Are there any tools in the Mastin Toolkit that we can use on this image? Well, let's try them out. I already love my white balance, so I'm not going to bother with auto white balance. Let's do lens correction on. Love it. Perfect. You know, photos are like about, sometimes for me, it's about, can you make it 10% better, 5% better? You know, just like little things that don't take too much time. That did. Okay, let's try auto transform. It might just go cuckoo bananas because this is kind of an extreme perspective, but let's see what happens. Auto transform. Oh, hey, you know what? That nice use of restraint CPU. That is not a cuckoo bananas change. That's perfect. That's just a nice little micro rotation. I love it. Orange reduction. I would not use it on this image. They look amazing. I mean, the skin tones are perfect. The background's perfect. It has that really nice separation of color that you get with Gold 200 with the like kind of the cool jade green background and then warm skin tone. We're just gonna leave it, call it good, easy edit. Looks really good. Okay. Let's move on down the line. Ian Marker sent this in. Oh, that's a very sweet photo. Very nice. And Ian wanted ektar. Easy. Let's do it. So ektar, going to increase the exposure. Ektar is everybody's darling this year. People love ektar. Yes, question.
Yes, from Jade Judd. Says, I have a question that may be unique to myself, but when you mentioned possible spray tan and other photos made me think of it, I tend to struggle with adult men looking red when I shoot. Their spouse may be tan, naturally fair, etc. Honestly, any skin tone, but I consistently end up with men that look like red, and using ektar tends to enhance that. Look, do you have any advice?
So Jay Judd asks, when I shoot people, like a couple, the man is usually very red, even if the other person isn't. Maybe they have a spray tan, something else. What were they using? Ektar? Mm-hmm. Okay, so my suggestion, Jade, is that I would first always try playing with the tint slider and go more towards green to cancel out that red. And then also, ektar is like red forward, like red and orange. That is like what ektar does. It was like not even meant for people. It's meant for landscapes. People have kind of just, they love the contrast and color of it, so they've been going crazy with it with people, as you'll see in this photo. But it can get a little bit too much with the red. So my first suggestion is always turn the tint slider towards green just a little bit, and then use the new orange reduction tool. That might help as well. My third suggestion is don't use ektar. If you're struggling with red, ektar is like, you know, ektar walks up to the color box and goes, oh, there's the red channel, like we're gonna go to 11. That is what ektar does. Ektar makes oranges and reds go to 11 out of 10. So you may not want to use it if you're having trouble with that. That is my suggestion. You may want to try Portra. Any of the Portra films from Portra Original. That's a really great pack for evening out skin tones that are really, really different. And the same holds true for real life. Like real film, Portra films do the same thing, like the actual physical film. So that is my suggestion. But great question. Thank you for asking it. So, okay, so I applied ektar to this image. Speaking of ektar, applied it to this image, raised the exposure. How are we doing with temperature and tint? I think it's too cool. I'm looking at this dude here. He's definitely too cool. So we're just gonna raise the temperature. I don't want to go so high that his shirt starts to glow yellow, but we can go quite a bit higher. Okay, now tint. Let's cruise around. Okay, first thing I notice is, so again, I'm always looking for neutrals for tint. This is concrete. He's walking on concrete. This is wood. Even his shirt I'm going to assume is like either white or maybe a slightly cream white and then kind of this like blue-green stripe. Those are all neutrals I'm looking for, and everything, all signs point to green, especially down here. This looks super green down in the corner. So I'm going to go to the tint slider and go up from +4 to like, I don't know, +10 maybe. There we go. So let me do that again. So right about here is about correct, but let me zoom in down here. And you could even just look down in this corner, and when this is correct, down in this corner, the whole image is going to be correct. So I'm just going to go up to like about there. It's pretty neutral. +12, maybe +15. Now I'm going to zoom back out, and I'll show you the difference. This is before. Now you can really see it. This is before, and that's after. And it looks like perfect. Okay. Enough about that. So that's your basic 3-step edit. Let's see, auto white balance is the best we can do with it. Sometimes it is perfect. Sometimes it'll get you closer. Sometimes it is way off, but it is a better tool. Let's do lens correction on. Great, that's a nice little improvement. And then auto transform. It's going to see all these beams and things, and it's going to make a nice conservative adjustment. Looks good. Orange reduction. Do we want to use orange reduction on this? Well, we could. I think it looks better without it. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a small crop, just because I feel like it's unweighted a little bit. I like to put them in the center. I don't know, maybe I'm boring. Right about there. That's a nice photo. It's a really nice photo. Let me get rid of that beam. All right, that's right about to there is where I would crop it. Doesn't that look really good? It's a really, really good photo, Ian. There is before and after with Ektar. Ektar doing all its Ektar stuff. Great stuff. Okay, let's move on. We have Anna Keith sending us this Festive photo. I think she's wearing a Santa Claus hat. What would I use for this? I think maybe Fuji every day. Well, let's see. Is there anything you viewers would like to see? You know, when I get these photos that don't have a specific preset that they want, let's do, I think, Fuji color every day. We're going to go back to Superior. Okay, it's very super warm. Let's bring the exposure down just a little bit. Let's see if auto white balance has any love for me today. Not bad, a little magenta, but not bad. I'm looking back here in these bushes. These have gotten a little magenta. It might, again, it's auto white balance, right? So it's a computer trying to figure stuff out. The way a film scanner works too with auto white balance, which is why you should never use it if you have your stuff scanned or if someone's scanning stuff for you. Never use auto white balance because it is looking at her shirt, and the opposite of this red color, or it's looking at these trees. Sorry, not the red. It's looking at these trees up here, this green, and it's trying to neutralize that with magenta, and it went a little bit too far. And I can see it in her face. I can see it in the bushes especially. So I'm just going to bring the tint back down towards green, and actually a little bit warmer. But it did a little bit of work for me. It wasn't quite the solution though. Okay, lens correction on. Nice, I like it. Auto transform. There is not a single building or anything in this image, so I'm not going to use it. An orange reduction, I don't think I need on this either. So it's just a really nice, simple, 3-step edit, 4-step edit with Superior 400. Just brings you that nice, like micro contrast, really crisp, clean color. It's a great all-around film. Okay, let's do something different. We have a question. Yes.
Someone asking to see an edit with portrait pushed.
Oh, with portrait push. Okay, I will do that after this image. I will do a portrait push image. So this is by Alex Ferk. Almost sounds like Kirk. Thank you for sending this in. Alex wanted Fuji 400H. Fantastic choice. So let's do 400H. I'm going to increase the exposure. There's quite a huge difference in exposure between the front of them and the back because it's shot like at a very like high noon type of situation, the high sun, but we can work with that. The temperature, let's try auto white balance again. Boom. Okay, there we go. Gosh, fourth time's the charm. That is perfect for Fuji 400H. Fuji 400H you want just on, right on the needle between too cool and just barely warm. That's a great place for that film to live. So that worked just fine. While we're here, let's do all soft. That's even nicer. Some of the tools in the toolkit, lens correction on. Doesn't do anything. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Auto transform on. Let's see if it can read this architecture in the background. Boop. That's a nice boop. Boop. Perfect. Okay. Orange reduction. I don't think it's needed in this either. It's already pretty cool. And in fact, I think the only thing I might do is maybe go up in exposure just one more time to about here. That is a very nice light and airy edit from start to finish. So light and airy and straight out of camera. Good stuff. Okay, let's see, portrait pushed. What would be good with that? Possibly this image. Let me see. So portrait pushed is a dark and moody pack. So I'm looking for something kind of dark and moody. I think this image would be good. And in fact, I think this image would have been really good for portrait push. But let's do something new. This is by Sarah Eder. Thank you for sending this in. And we had a request for portrait pushed. So let's see how that looks. Portrait push is like a very stylized look. It's when you push film in development. We've emulated that look. And what happens when you push film in development is that you force that film to react as though it is a higher ISO than it is. You don't really need to know that. But what you do need to know is that it makes a color shift in the shadows and it increases the saturation most of the time and definitely increases the contrast. Really kind of crushes the black point and just makes the image more contrasty. So it's a very moody look. It's really popular with like boudoir photography, anything kind of just dark and moody in general. So this feels kind of moody. It's out in a forest. I don't know. The light is pretty dim. We'll see how it looks. So let's do portrait pushed one stop. Let's try two stops. I think two stops is where you see like the really like moody moodiness because portrait 160 push two stops goes really red in the shadows. Do we want that for her? I think we want to keep a little bit of green in the trees. So I'm going to do portrait 400 pushed one stop. Next with exposure. Yeah, it's meant to be moody, so I'm not going to really bump that up much. I'm going to actually leave it. I think I bumped it up 0.15, so just barely anything. And now I'm going to look at temperature. The portrait pushed films in general are very warm brown, red-ish. So I may actually increase the temperature on this a little bit. And then looking around and trying to determine if the image is too green or magenta. Again, I'm going to go take a little tour around my neutrals. There's not many things to pick from here because the snow is not always a great indicator. Her dress, I know, is not white or gray. This lone tree out here is the only thing that I can point to as possibly neutral. So tree bark, especially this kind of tree, whatever it is, an aspen tree or larch, that bark is like kind of blue-gray. So that gives me kind of a clue as to what to do. And overall, I think it could go a little more towards magenta, just a tiny bit. whoops, there we go, 2 points. So that is a basic dark and moody look. So from here to here. And dark and moody is meant to make it, or I should just call it the dark and moody pack. Portrait push is for dark and moody imagery. It is not appropriate for like this. It would look really weird. Like if I did, yeah, it just looks weird. It doesn't look right. It's the shadows are too strong. It's too blocked up. It's just not. It's not a happy, particularly happy look. It's more of like poetic, moody look. So I like to keep it to things that already carry that vibe a little bit. Last thing I would do, as always, is I just think 35 millimeter vertical is way too tall. So I'm just going to kind of crop this into a nicer shape for a portrait. Maybe even tighter to get rid of that tree stump on the left. All right. There we go. Nice portrait. Okay, let's move on down the line. Got this one from Carl Jones. Is this Carl Jones the second? Because I know you. Well, I don't really know you. I kind of know you. I know you online. And I'm really glad that you sent in more photos. So, Carl, this is for you. Okay, so it's kind of later in the day, lower light, slightly high overcast. I can see like the top of her face here is a little bit brighter. So there is some kind of high overcast in the sky. There is a lot of contrast actually. If you look at her face, like her hair, like in the front here, or like way down in here, it's pretty dark compared to up here. So whatever I do, I'm gonna have to really kind of massage the contrast levels to get it right. I think this feels like a Fuji Everyday type of image. Fuji Everyday is kind of like everyday moments, but in, I don't know, I always associate it with like fall and winter and whatever the opposite of a tropical place is. A not tropical place. I don't even know what I'm saying. It just has nice tones, essentially. So let's do Superior 400 and just see what happens. Okay, yeah, we have some contrast issues here, but we'll get to that. So I'm going to bring up the exposure a little bit. I'm going to bring the temperature down a little bit. And tint towards, I'll bring it down even more. Bring down the exposure. Just going to play with this for a minute here until it feels right. Again, we have kind of a big difference between this part of the image and way up here on the top of her forehead, and even on her shoulder and her shoulder. Let's see. I'm looking around at neutrals, so like the side of this building looks a little bit green to me, so I'm going to add more magenta. Not that much, just a little bit. Right about there. Okay, so we have like a very basic edit. Just 3 steps, very basic edit. Now we can tackle some of the other issues, like with perspective and contrast. So I'm going to use All Soft to kind of just bring back both shadow and highlight detail. And then I'm going to go down to lens correction. Does it do anything? It's fine. Sometimes that can really help even out lighting across a frame from left to right and all the corners. Okay, auto transform. Let's just get this done. This is the one I've been wanting to do. There we go. That is very helpful. Auto transform is reading this window in the background, and that crookedness, that was like really throwing me off. So this looks really good. I think I might add just, let me see. I go up in exposure just a little bit more and a little more warmth, like right about there. Okay, so two other things I'm going to do is I want to add grain. So this image has a little bit of grain in it, or I would say camera noise. So you can add 35 millimeter grain, which what it does, okay, grain is awesome anyway. I think it's kind of a nice finishing touch on a lot of images. Not only does grain look cool, it also covers up digital sensor noise. So there's a difference between digital sensor noise and grain. Grain camouflages that noise. It evens it out, kind of. It procedurally generates grain, I guess, over that noise, and it kind of ties everything together. And it looks really good on this. Okay, the last second thing I'm going to do is I think this will look so cool in black and white. So in the same pack, Fuji Color Everyday, I'm just going to go to Acros, do that, but apply Acros, go up in exposure just a little bit, and then go to Shadow Soft. Oh, actually I'm going to bring exposure down to about there. And I think that looks really, really good too. So let me make a copy of this. And then I'm going to go back into the history and go back to the color one. Oops. And I think, oh, come on, render. That's the pixel filter. They both look really good. So Carl, this is a super cool image. It reminds me a little bit of like Vogue magazine-y, like the colors and just how many nice faces are all together. It's very simple in a great way. So I love it. Thank you for sending it in. Okay. All right, I've got time for one more photo. And it is from James Mercer, who requested Fuji Color. I'm going to assume that means Fuji 400H, I think. I don't know. It feels like a light and airy photo. Or maybe you mean something else. So let's just do Fuji Color Original. Let's do 160 NS because we don't talk about it enough. Another really nice look in that pack, completely overshadowed by Fuji 400H. So Fuji 160 NS, a little more vivid, a little more emphasis on cyan and magenta, makes them more saturated. So I applied Fuji 160 NS, increased the exposure. Oh yeah, this is just like this is like opening a nice package. Like I just increase the exposure. It's like opening that package and seeing a wonderful gift inside. This looks really good. So, whoa, two-step edit. It looks awesome. Do I need to do any correction with white balance or tint? I don't think so. I think it looks really good. Possibly a little bit towards green. And in fact, this is one of those really rare cases, well, for me at least, where I would use like all hard, or maybe highlight hard. Yeah, highlight hard, to give it just a little more pop just at the end. Just bring up those highlights a little bit more, make them a little more contrasty, and that looks really good. Lens correction on. Do we need it? Yeah, sure. It's a tiny bit better. Auto transform. Okay, I don't know what it read. It's correct though. I don't know. It's magic. They're actually standing straighter. Looks better. Yeah, and that's about it. I might add 35mm grain because I'm feeling funny. And that is, look at this. Before on the left and after on the right. Really, really nice. So I hope that was helpful. There's a lot of really new, cool tools in the toolkit, and there's a lot of improvements to the old ones. You're gonna love it. If you haven't updated, if you've purchased before November 12th, 2020, you need to update. You're crazy if you don't update. For those that have updated or who have purchased on or after November 12th, 2020, awesome. Enjoy the new tools. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us in the Mastin Labs community, or you can reach out to us directly at m.me/Mastin Labs, and we will answer your direct message. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed it. It's been really fun, and I'll see you guys around in the group. Until then, have a great day and happy editing.